Down at the bottom of page 3 for 7.6 then, let's do another example. And now, as you go through the assignment, notice we jump from number 30 at the top of the page to number 52. We're further on in the assignment. They're going to look more complicated, but our steps are not going to change. But let's look at what makes this one look more complicated. We've got y times the quantity y plus 9 equals 4 times the quantity 2y plus 5. And so you would just want to pause and ask yourself, this is a great technique to help get you ready for the exam. What's different? Well, what's different is I've got y's. That doesn't really change anything. We know how to factor and solve equations with y. That's okay. But what's different also is I've got parentheses here. It almost looks like things are factored already. And that's a great instinct to think, oh, maybe it's already factored. But what we don't have here is we don't have it in standard form, which is very familiar to the one we just did. It does not start setting equal to 0. So we're going to go ahead and do step 1, and that is to get it back to standard, which means equal to 0. So let's go ahead and move this to the left side, this 4 minus 2y plus 5. So I've got y times y plus 9 minus this whole thing. Since it's being multiplied, we can just move this whole thing at once. So minus the 4 times 2y plus 5 equals 0. And so what looked like already factored form here, once we moved it to the side, we realized, oh, we've got two separate terms here. I can't apply the zero product property yet. I don't have something times something equal to 0. So what do we do now? If you had an instinct to go ahead and distribute, that is a great instinct as well, because that will allow us to then look for and combine like terms and rearrange till we get a standard quadratic equation that looks something like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So let's go ahead and do that. Y times y is y squared. Y times 9 is a plus 9. When you distribute this minus 4, take the negative with it. Think of it as a plus negative 4. So negative 4 times 2y is going to be a negative 8y. Negative 4 times 5 is a negative 20. We're still equal to 0. We haven't done anything with that yet. Like terms turns this into y squared plus y minus 20 is equal to 0. And in the interest of our space and our time, I'm going to go ahead and talk through the factoring, but maybe not show all the steps, because I'm going to presume that by the time you get to 7.6, your factoring skills are starting to fall into place. We've been factoring since section 1 of chapter 7. Hopefully you're getting, like we hope for, boringly good at factoring. So we check for GCF. There's nothing that all three pieces have in common. We ask how many terms. There are 3. I'm going to go ahead and factor using the strategic split. When I do that, I'm trying to multiply 20 times 1. I split 20 to get my pair that's going to subtract to give me 1. It ends up being 5 and 4. And then when I factor by grouping, so let's see, let's go ahead and write the split down. So y squared plus 5y minus 4y minus 20 equals 0. Some of you might want to just move right to the guess and test part of this, the trial and error part of factoring. Whatever you can do to save yourself time and grab yourself those extra minutes. So if you're getting really good at factoring, use that to your advantage. Okay? And then when you factor by grouping, you pull out the y of the first 2 terms and get y plus 5. You pull out the minus 4 of the second 2, you get y plus 5. And if this factoring piece isn't making sense to you, I'm doing a lot of the steps in my head right now to get us to what the focus is of this section, which is using the zero product principle to solve the equation. So if you're not following the factoring part right here in red, then you need to go back to some of the previous lessons and watch some of those. What we're doing right now can be found in 7.2 and 7.3, converting 3 terms to 4, and then factoring by grouping we covered in 7.1b, the second part of 7.1. Okay, and then this has a big GCF of y plus 5, leaving behind the y minus the 4, and the whole thing's still equal to 0. So there's our factored form. So everything in red was the factoring part here. So now we're at y plus 5 times y minus 4 equals 0. I've got something times something equals 0, so either the first something equals 0, this is setting each factor equal to 0, or the second something, y minus 4 equals 0. And then we have a couple of easy one-step equations to solve. I get y equals -5 or y equals 4. And it is possible to get two answers in these situations. We'll investigate that later, why that is. But rest assured, it's okay if you get two. It's also okay, like in the previous example, we just ended up with 1. And sometimes there'll be no answer that works. So, but with a quadratic, never more than 2. So, totally normal to get 2. We'll discuss why a little bit later. And then we can check this, go back and check that in the original, just in case you made any algebra or factoring errors as you went along. You want to convince yourself that your wrong answer is right by using an incorrect version of the original equation. So, -5, if you do -5 plus 9, that's 4. 4 times -5 is -20. -5 times 2 is -10. Plus 5 is -5. -5 times 4 is -20. So -5 works. How about 4? 4 plus 9 is 13. Times 4 is 52. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. 13 times 4 is 52. So both of those work. So we made sure they fit, they work, and now we're putting them in set notation. It's like we're wrapping it up with a little bow. We've double checked the present is the right fit for who we're giving it to, and we are putting it in our little cute presentation using the little braces. The French, they're not really French braces. They just look extra fancy. For some reason I think French stuff is extra fancy. Who knows? Okay, so now we've made it to the bottom of the page. Take a moment to kind of talk through what you've seen on this page, especially if you can do it with someone else. That's great. Teaching someone else is one of the fastest, most surefire ways to get yourself totally ready for the exam, because you'll have to know it and understand it forwards and backwards to be able to convince somebody else of what you're trying, what's happening in your head. Then you can try number 44. So now's a good time to pause the video, and then we'll come back for the answer here. Okay, and we're back for the answers to this one, and you should end up with a solution set of -3 and +6. -3 and +6 are the two solutions. If you made an error, if those were not the answers you came up with, remember, it's factored to start with, but it's not set equal to 0. So you can't apply the zero product property until you get it equal to 0. So you would need to move that 18 over, then it becomes x times x minus 3 minus 18 equals 0. And now you can't apply the zero product property because you have that minus piece in there. So now you distribute, combine like terms, and then finally with the entire quadratic equation on one side equal to 0, you can do the factoring and then set each factor equal to 0. So this one has a couple steps involved to even get it to the rearranged part, just like the one up above.